So far, we have looked at characterizing the supply curve of the firm under free trade, when they are free to sell whatever they want at prices, at fixed prices P. Now, we want to look at more general versions of the problem of the firm in which they may face more complex economic constraints. For example, here we're going to look at a policy theta in which the firm faces a tax tau greater than 0 per unit produced. And of course, it can sell at any price P. And the question is, what does the supply for any P looks under theta? Okay? That's the question. Now, let's look at the problem of the firm. It's going to say maximize over Q greater or equal than 0 of P of Q, which is the revenue just as before, minus the cost of producing Q, which is C of Q, just as before, but now we have this plus tau Q. So these are the total cost of production, taking into account that from the point of view of the firm, the tax is like an increase in production. And that's an important insight, because then notice what we can do. Let's say that the marginal cost with theta greater than 0 is basically the marginal cost when there is no tax plus tau. And the average total cost curve when the tax is there should be obvious to you that is equal to the average total cost curve when there is no tax plus tau. So let's see what has happened when the tax was introduced with respect to the case in which there was no tax. So this is Q. I'm going to draw the case of no tax in gray. So that was a case, let's say, in which, for example, the average total cost curve with tau equals 0 was there. Let's say the marginal cost curve, for example, with tau equals 0 was there. And we had that the supply function was given by this, from all that we have derived before. That is Q star, I'm going to denote by T equals 0 of P. Now what happens when we introduce the tax? I'm going to draw that in red. What happens is that the marginal cost curve has shifted up by tau everywhere. So this is marginal cost with tau greater than 0, and that's just a shift of tau everywhere. And the same thing by the average variable cost curve. So now it looks like this. Sorry, it's not perfectly drawn there. It's a constant shift. So again, it's a constant shift of tau everywhere. And this is the average total cost curve with tau greater than 0. Now, under this new regime, by the same logic as before, what does the supply become? Well, you supply there and there. Okay? That will be Q star for tau greater than 0 of P. Notice all that has happened basically is that the supply curve, the positive amount, has been shifted up by tau units. So in particular, if before, for example, the price cut level was there, let's say that was the cut at which production supply became positive, now it has shifted to P bar plus tau. But the quantity produced once it becomes positive is the same as before, this Q bar. And then it increases according to the marginal cost curve. Now, this should be quite intuitive. What the firm is reacting to basically is when you impose the tax, it's asking itself, what is my net price, which is P minus tau? So at any price P, it supplies the same amount that before it supplied at price P minus tau. In other words, the impact of the policy is to have that Q star with tau greater than 0 of P is just Q star of tau equals 0 of P minus tau. Notice another aspect of the intuition that I want to highlight, that from the point of view of the firm, the tax per unit produced just looked like a shift in cost, a parallel shifting cost up. And that is why the supply curve just ends up shifting up. Notice that from the point of view of the firm, it doesn't matter if the change in cost is driven by the imposition of this unit tax per unit produced, or whether there was a technological shift that changed the cost in this way. Both will have produced exactly the same shift in the supply function. Let me do another example to give you more practice about how this works in general. So consider a policy theta that basically forces a company to donate 1 unit to government for free per unit sold in the market. So weird policy, very non-free market, but it's a policy that a firm may face. And suppose in particular this imposed on a firm that has a total cost curve that looks like this: 8 plus 1/2 of Q squared, where these are some semi-fixed costs. So the question is, what is Q star of theta for any price P in this case? Now to solve, as always, first let's look at what the problem of the firm is, which is maximize over Q greater or equal than 0. Important, this Q is going to be the amount sold in the market. It's not the amount produced, it's the amount sold in the market. Okay, so what is the revenue of the firm if it sells that much? It's PQ. What is its cost is this semi-fixed cost plus 1/2. Importantly, it has to produce twice as many to donate to the government what it requires, so it has a total cost given by this. Now, under this policy, under this problem, the marginal revenue is equal to P. The marginal cost, if you do the algebra, is equal to 4Q. And the average total cost is going to be given by 8 divided by Q plus 2Q squared divided by Q, which of course is equal to 8 divided by Q plus 2Q. Please notice that this Q is again the amount sold in the market. And a way of thinking, by the way, intuitively of the problem is that from the point of view of the firm, it doesn't care that it has to donate to the government. What it cares is that it has transformed its cost function into something that looks like this instead of this because of the mandatory donation policy. Now, coming back to what the average total cost curve looks like, this curve has a minimum at Q minimum ATC equals 2. And by the way, the minimum ATC, if you substitute, is equal to 8. So to draw this for you, this is going to be a case in which the marginal cost looks like this, is 4Q, and the average total cost curve looks like this. It takes its minimum value at 2, and it takes the minimum value that it takes is 8. So from this, immediately we can see that Q star of P, from everything that we have learned, is going to be equal to 0 if P is less or equal than 8. In other words, in that case, we're going to be there, including there. Or if price is higher, we're going to be there. So in that case, we have that if P is greater or equal than 8, we're going to be at P divided by 4. That's it.